All right, hello all. It's good to be back with you now on this first reading of 20 through 1st and 2nd Kings. You will find that it is a continuation of the narrative of 1st and 2nd Samuel, although like the narrative of 1st and 2nd Samuel, we don't know who wrote it, but where we left off at the conclusion of 2nd Samuel, the whole most of Second Samuel was a train wreck. David's decline, really, and the last thing that he did was count up his soldiers, and that provoked an ill response from God, to say the least. And now we transition over, and it's the transition, as you see, is going to be one of David on his way out, and someone else is making their way in. And so here, as the book opens up here, it's very, very symbolic in literary language. David is old. They covered him with blankets, and he could not get warm. Now, certainly it's what is it? Is it circulation and the causes that there's reasons why they say older people are more cold natured? Maybe that's going on with David, but I think it's very telling and symbolic here. David's not able to get warm, and so they're gonna take a virgin, a beautiful woman, and they're gonna send him in there. And she's going to lay with him and keep him warm. And, it says that they are not intimate. However, it's kind of interesting here in the latter part of David's life. He's cold and he's alone. They have to go and fetch a woman who's going to lay with him. In 2nd Samuel, the prophet Nathan had given judgment upon David's house, and it was going to be a mess, and his household was going to be tore up, and that we read that happened, and now this is where David is in his elder years. In our last video of 2nd Samuel, in the synopsis, I went over it. I covered David fairly well as far as his caricature here in the Old Testament, and as much as he is seen as being the peak of Hebrew history. He's remembered not so much because of him, but because of the time period that he was in, and because of the promises that were made through him. So now that David is getting weak, there's going to be some deja vu. Adonijah, his son, is going to set to take the kingdom now. He thought this was going to be his. He's promoting himself. He's the eldest one that is remaining. And, he's planning to take everything over. And what's happening? David is not correcting him. It says David's not trying to fix this problem. And so, once again, we see this idea of fathers not having the appropriate control over their sons in a patriarchal society. Interestingly, even with Jonathan in 1st and 2nd Samuel, who was the positive example of a son, yet he didn't fall under his father's patriarchal wishes. He went against his father, and so Adonijah, he's going to be king, and he sounds like Absalom. It's reminded that he was the next to Absalom, and also says he was very handsome. That's how Absalom was described. And he is going to get an allegiance with the high priest, Abiathar. he's going to have an allegiance with Joab. The people are really going to be with Adonijah. Sounds like maybe they are ready for a leadership change. But there's a divide. Not everybody is going with Adonijah. The priest Zadok, he's not going to go with Adonijah. Neither is Nathan the prophet. Remember Nathan, who was the one who stood up to David after his event with Bathsheba. So Nathan is going to go to Bathsheba and tell her she needs to get to David and let him know what Adonijah is doing. And she needs to fix this, and she's going to needs to make sure for the protection of her household. Remember, David had several wives, several children. For the continuation of Solomon, David's going to have to appoint Solomon to be the successor. And so David, he's old, he's cold. We get that. However, it's Nathan and Bathsheba who's taking care of things with the kingdom at this point, with this pertinent thing. And it's Adonijah who is also has been managing things, and so David's not much for management at this point. I think we're supposed to notice that and get that. And so Solomon is appointed king. Solomon is not the oldest. He's not close to the oldest, I don't believe. However, but it is a continuation throughout the Old Testament that's even seen in certain parallels in the New Testament. The older will serve the younger. Remember, David was the youngest of his brethren, but yet he becomes king, and so there's that pattern that's in repetition, and chapter, and of course Adonijah is he and his people panic. They're wondering what's going to happen. But before David dies, he's going to give Solomon some advice, some policy advice. Some of it is good to be faithful to God, basically, and some of it is a little more practical, I suppose. And he tells him that he needs to take care of Joab, and needs to take care of the blood that's on Joab's hands. Now, Joab is a good soldier. He's been faithful to Saul, then faithful to David, but it looks like we might be cleaning house here. We'll come to that shortly. In the meantime, Adonijah goes to Bathsheba. Now, Bathsheba was a wife of David, but was not the mother of Adonijah. It's odd for him to be going to her. He wants to keep peace. He says he's not going to try to fight Solomon being coronated as king. However, his one request is he wants a specific woman that's going to be given to him as a bride, and wants Solomon to grant this. So Bathsheba is going to go to Solomon and make this request to him, to her son, that Adonijah gets a certain woman as his wife. And Solomon seems to see through it. There's more going on here. If Adonijah is trying to manipulate for a wife, then he might manipulate for a kingdom. He gets upset. Let's take care of this guy. I don't want this guy hovering over my shoulders during my kingship, especially during my young kingship. So Solomon's going to demand Adonijah has to die. Solomon's going to remove the high priest, Abiathar. He wanted to kill Abiathar, except that Abiathar had been there with David, and he had some respect for that. And then Solomon's going to proceed and have Joab killed. And so here we have the transition from one to another. It's it's difficult to make what to make of Solomon at this point. He's taking care of business, he's cleaning house, and some of it seems culturally appropriate. Um, he's taken the bull by the horn, as we would say, and so really, what the questions that we are set up with as we continue our reading now is, what is Solomon going to do now that he's cleaned house, now that he's new? What's his policy going to be? We've had Saul and we've had David to measure him by, and how will Solomon stack up? Thank you all.